Hey folks, welcome to the Adventure Metrics Podcast. I'm Matt Horwitz.
I'm Scott Brills.
And welcome.
I'm Eden Orfanos. Oh, I guess you'll introduce me, right? I just jump in.
It's okay. I should have said something.
First, man, head first.
We have Eden Orfanos on the show. Eden has been a top model in Europe, a producer for Playboy. She's a professional Hollywood makeup artist and a world traveler. She's done amazing humanitarian work in Uganda and Rwanda, helping disadvantaged children in difficult situations. Eden, you've traveled extensively through Indonesia, Southeast Asia, Africa, Papua New Guinea, Australia, and you even camped for 3 months throughout Mexico. You're now living in London, and you're off to Sicily tomorrow to hike a volcano. Welcome to the show.
Hi.
Welcome.
So what are you doing in London, and what made you go and decide to go off to Sicily to hike a volcano?
Well, I had started using London kind of as a base to jump off for my East Africa work because it's a lot easier and more cost effective to fly from London than it is from the US, especially from California. So I kind of started using London as a base, and I acquired a couple friends here, and then I acquired a husband. And so, yeah, it kind of just worked out like that. And I've really been enjoying, though, like being here in London because it's an amazing springboard to Europe. And like we just were like, oh, hey, let's go to Morocco for the weekend. Cool. And it was like 2.5 hours later, we're like in Morocco. It was awesome.
Yeah.
You know, you can't do that when you live in LA. You know, let's go to Vegas. You know, so it's been good. And I was in Malta last year, and I'm a diver, and I wanted to dive Malta, and so
I've heard that's amazing. I've heard the diving there is great.
it's really cool.
Geographically, are we talking? Is this like north of Cyprus in the Mediterranean, or am I way off? Or
Yeah, it's south of Sicily.
okay, cool. At least I was on the right continent.
No, but it's really cool because it's like a really amazing combination of all these cultures. There's like an interesting Greek culture. There's a place called it's not megalith. It's called Gigante, and it's some of the oldest stone megaliths in the world. And they've been dated back to the same age as when they discovered the wheel. And they're something like 10 meters tall. So no one knows how the hell they got them at the top of these hills. And they were like ceremonious, obviously, kind of structures, but really freaking sick. I mean, it's like these 10-meter giant blocks, like 10 meters by like 4 meters. Crazy big, tall.
So
And
you've adopted well to the metric system.
it's a wonder I can do any math at all, really.
Yeah, no, it's good. Traveling teaches you all kinds of things, especially learning different. I saw a map. There was some post. Did you see that that viral blog post that went around? It was like 40 maps that'll change the way you look at the world or something.
Yeah.
And one of the maps was like all the countries in the world that use the metric system, and it was like everything except the U.S. and like one other random country.
I think there's two. There's like what is it? U.S., Burma, and like small African nation, something like that.
Yeah.
Wait, we have to do our traditional. We have to do our cheers.
My favorite part of the show.
We have to do our digital cheers. Cheers, everybody.
Cheers.
Welcome. And Eden, share with us what your drink of choice is for today.
Today I am drinking tea. It's like a chai tea that I got in Kenya.
Cool. Scott, what'd you have?
White Ayurvedic chai from Teavana.com, and I put some MCT oil in there for a little kick in the morning.
Eden,
Tea oil.
MCT oil. It's like the good stuff out of coconut oil. It's
like, is that a growth hormone or?
No, not that. No, it's actually like it's condensed coconut oil. It's all natural oil. It gives you a kind of a it's like caffeine, but it doesn't have any downer. It's just the pure oil. And so it kind of gives you a not a buzz, but gives you some energy in the morning without any kind of downsides later on.
Okay, cool. Glad I can't see you face down.
Oh yeah, right. Yes, it's got. I put it in my brand new double-walled Ozeri glass.
Oh yeah, those are dope.
Very, very cool.
You're all fancy today, man.
Yeah, I am very fancy. I admit it. I was actually I was on a road trip through California just a couple months ago, and one of the guys that I was staying with had some of these. I was like, "Wow, that's amazing! I'd love to get one of those." And he's like, "Yeah, just watch out because do not like set it down too hard. Do not like put it in the dishwasher because it'll shatter." And
What
sure
is it
enough,
made
I
of
already
again?
have like a little crack down here. Like, damn it.
I got unfriended from my friend in New York because she had those. I say had.
Oh no.
You got unfriended in
Like
which
these
way?
are great for wine, right?
What's the name of the glass again, Scott? And what does it do?
So it's double walled. You can kind of see it.
Yeah.
You look at it like that. And so it keeps cold things cold and hot things hot. And so I can, generally if you have a mug and you got tea in it, you have to hold it by the handhold. With this, you can just kind of hold it however you want to, and you don't really feel the heat.
Interesting. Yeah, I had some coffee this morning, but I wasn't going to have another cup before this. Sometimes, depending on where I am, I either put a little bit of coconut oil, or if I have MCT oil, and I put grass-fed butter in there and a little bit of dark chocolate, and they blend it up with the coffee. It's like this. So the MCT oil and the coconut oil, it's like a mini little. I wouldn't call it it's not a fad. It could turn into one, but it's like a little. I don't know, like a little subculture pop thing.
It's a fad amongst certain people.
Yeah, it's a fad amongst like productivity-ish, hacker-ish kind of people.
It's obviously not here. The Queen doesn't know about it. They're real slow here in London.
Yeah.
Eat it. I'll have to get them to start ingesting it. Put it in the water. People aren't very motivated here.
I can see people dropping a half stick of butter into their Earl Grey in the morning.
Yeah. But now I just have some herbal licorice tea for the respiratory system. I don't know. I just grabbed it randomly out of the cabinet downstairs. But
good.
Yeah. So, Eden, you are off to Sicily tomorrow?
Yeah. We're going to climb a volcano. So my point was I was in Malta, and they were offering ferry rides over to Sicily to see the volcano. I'm like, oh, yeah. And I started reading about, these islands in Sicily. There's 7 tiny little islands. One is called Vulcan and Stromboli, and it's the second largest volcano in all of Europe. So, and it's alive. It like goes off every day, which is awesome.
And this is are you guys hiking to the summit, or is this sort of a scenic?
Yeah. We're gonna hike to the summit. Yeah.
What's the altitude, or how big is the climb?
Oh God, it's like they said it's about a 6-hour journey.
Okay.
It's not as big as Mount Etna. It's smaller than Mount Etna.
Where's Mount Etna? Is that in Italy as well?
Mount Etna is actually in Sicily. It's on the mainland of Sicily. It's it's I don't know if you know much about Sicily, but it's on the southeast.
My grandfather's Sicilian.
Oh, cool!
You should know this stuff then, Matt.
I know.
Come on. What are you doing?
I don't know. I'm 25%. I'm 25% Sicilian.
25. That means I'm going to break your face in two. That's the only thing I know. And where's the toilet? And the Pope thinks you're a whore.
I love that.
Fine. That's all you need.
I love that.
Yeah, I think hiking. I've done some hiking on volcanoes as well. And anytime you're just like, yeah, I'm going hiking. Where are you going? On a volcano. It just makes the hiking sound twice as cool.
Oh yeah, totally.
Where did you go?
I hiked a volcano in Ecuador and one in Nicaragua.
Okay.
Yeah.
They're both live?
Jeez, I don't even remember. I think the one in Ecuador, I didn't reach the summit. It was like a casual 3-hour thing. I got altitude sickness on it, which sucked really bad. So the volcano Chimborazo in Ecuador is I believe it's not the tallest volcano in Ecuador, but because the base of the volcano is so high in elevation that the summit of Chimborazo is the closest point to the sun in the world. So,
is it really?
Yeah. And I was happy because then I think last year I went to the Dead Sea, which is the lowest point on Earth. So I've been to the lowest and the highest point. I was like, hell yeah, that sounds cool. But yeah, when we were walking, before we even began any climb whatsoever, my resting heart rate was like 90 beats per minute, just doing nothing. And we were walking and my heart rate was like 120. And now I know, now I'll recognize what that is. And I was with a girl who had already lived there for some time, and my buddy was like this, I don't know, I think of him as he's like a triathlete swimmer. He's all, I don't know, respiratory, lung capacity, insane. So they were just like off and running, and like 3 hours later, I got some pretty hardcore altitude sickness. It was a long story, but anyway, it always makes for a good story afterwards. So
yeah. Scott, did you do like Kilimanjaro or any of that in your Africa travels? Mount Kenya?
Yeah, I've hiked volcanoes, but unfortunately only extinct volcanoes. So I've done Fuji, I've done Kilimanjaro. I was going to do a live one in on the French island of Réunion, but unfortunately didn't have a car. Didn't realize you needed a car to get there, and so wasn't able to do that. But someday I'll hike up a live volcano, I'm sure.
I'm all about the happy ending. I gotta, I want the magma. If I'm gonna trek up there, I want the magma.
Right. Yeah, I don't want to get up there.
Give me the magma.
Yeah, I think anything you do is amplified if there's a risk of death involved.
Yeah, right? People are like, why do you want to swim with sharks? I'm like, because if I live, I can tell about it.
Yeah, those always make the best stories. You don't want to just be like, oh, I swam in the ocean. People are like, oh, okay, well, why are you telling me about this?
Yeah.
Eden, take us back a little bit. What was a catalyst, or what got you interested in exploration, travel, growth, things of that sort? And I know that you said you learned a lot back in your modeling days, or was it before then?
Yeah.
Why are you so awesome?
Pardon?
Why are you so awesome nowadays?
Oh, no. I think there are a lot of factors involved. My biological mother is handicapped. So there was any going anywhere. And I was a really hyperactive child. I know it's probably really hard for you guys to imagine that, but I was really hyper. And I had literally probably as big as your room there, Matt, was as big as the area I had to play in, which was concrete. And a very small subdivision in Texas. We did not have much wealth at all. So I kind of decided at a young age that I was going places. And my favorite thing was my grandfather giving me this globe, and I used to spin it all the time and just put my finger on different places. I want to go there. I want to go there. I want to go there. You just know it's a little shit, Yeah. And then I realized that that through modeling, I could travel around. And this was 100 years ago. Okay. Way long ago. I could be Cindy Crawford's grandmother. Okay. So I ended up from Texas going to New York when I was 16, 17, stayed there for a little while. I'm like, okay, that's cool. Next. And then.
So you moved there when you were
17.
Oh, cool.
19, I had an option to go to France, and so I went to Paris, and I went there. And then from there, I got on the train system, and it was like, holy moly. Anytime I made any money, which I didn't work a lot, I just worked enough to support myself, which was totally fine. And that was back before the dollar sucked. And I was living like a queen, because it's oh, lira, I'm changing dollar to lira. I have 3 times more money now. Say that, what's that? Do I wipe my shoe with it, or do I give it for coffee? But anyway, so I was making enough money to travel. And I think also that I ended up traveling and working in all these different places. My agent would be like, oh, you got a contract to go to Portugal, to do a few days of work in Portugal. And I think it gave me a different concept of travel, because I actually was working in these arenas, in these areas. And I actually, after that, couldn't just travel to travel. I had to do something the local people, or I had to rub shoulders with day-to-day people, which gave me a totally different, I would have to sit on the metro and wait, and I would have to go to the post office and wait, and I would have to do, go to change money and wait, and go to the grocery store and stand in line with everybody else and pay my rent and freak out when the heater wasn't working or the water stopped. So I think at a young age, I kind of got this different concept of travel. Yeah. That I was actually with people and I was working. So then after that, I ended up just going, someone's like, oh, my friend just came back from Japan and she made a lot of money. And I was like, cool, I'm going. They're
Here's where the story gets crazy.
I don't know, I'll figure it out. And within 2 days, I had an agent, and I just took off. And I wasn't very smart back then. Not saying that I'm smart now, but I was a little less smarter. Yeah. And so I was reading in this little guidebook, because there weren't guidebooks 20,000 years ago, when I was, first starting. And it just was oh, this place sounds cool. I didn't realize I got to Japan. Obviously if you're in Europe, you can kind of fake the languages, a little bit, especially in Latin areas, Even if you're in Africa, you know, a lot of countries speak some English or they speak French or Portuguese, so you can kind of fake it a little bit. Ended up in the oldest part of Tokyo, everything is in characters. Like everything, and I was just like, oh my God, what have I done? And I was like this much taller than everybody. And they were just all staring at me like, crazy white redhead, what are you doing here? I was like, Godzilla. But it was amazing. And so I really had to make myself adept at figuring things out, not knowing the language, not knowing the people, not knowing where the hell I was, but just I became really adept at figuring situations out really, really quickly. As well, when you're modeling and you're put in all these different situations with new people all the time, you have to really be very sensitive to what is going on in someone else's head and what they're feeling and how you're sensing them. Mm-hmm. So I think that helped also when I do travel to foreign countries that are a bit kind of challenging, like, you know, Western Africa or Papua New Guinea, or just to be safe, you know, how you have to present yourself and behave, especially as a woman, right, to survive in these areas. And knock on wood, you know, in all the times I've traveled by myself to a lot of these countries, I haven't had little or no problems, you know, because I kind of shape shift into this other person, this other like identity, right, to protect myself and just to kind of go on my way, you know, and to get things done. So like, I take on this other persona almost, you know, or like dumb down my voice. I dress like a man. I walk like a man. I cover myself completely, not in a way that's like in a female way. Like you'd think, like when I was in Africa, you know, I was working in a lot of Muslim communities, but I didn't prepare myself like that. I just dressed like a man would dress, and you know, plain, simple. Yeah.
No cleavage, stuff like that.
I mean, you must know, Scott, because you traveled all through. I mean, you were in Khartoum, obviously. Did you go all the way to Egypt?
Yeah. Yeah, I was stuck there for about 5 weeks.
That's it? That's fast. That's cool.
No. Just in Egypt. I was stuck in Egypt for 5 weeks.
I thought, oh my God, how did you get from South Africa to Egypt in 5 weeks? Wow.
No.
Camel, man.
I experienced all the different, you know, the changing cultures going from one country to another, and, you know, the different ways of doing things and dress and social mores and things like that. You know, where people would be like, so how was Africa? And it's like, you know, well, it depends on what country, because it's like saying, oh, how was America? And are you talking about the US? Are you talking about Argentina? Are you talking about like Belize? You know, it's the same kind of question. But yeah, I get what you're saying about that.
Did you have to change did you dress differently, Scott, in any of the countries that you went throughout, or did you kind of just?
It's a lot easier as a guy. And so the biggest thing is that we were mindful if we were going to be touring or visiting like mosques, to not like wear wife beater type shirts or, you know, shorts or sandals. You can do that, and they'll generally look the other way, but it's a little bit disrespectful. So we wanted to be as respectful as possible when we're visiting, you know, in another country at some kind of religious site. But other than that, I mean, some of the girls that are with us, you know, they had to go to greater lengths and not show shoulders, for instance, and to wrap their head with like a scarf or whatever they had on them. Yeah. So yeah, for females, it's a little bit trickier.
Were you going to ask something, Eden?
Oh, just that. I mean, as a woman, you're not allowed to go to some places. You're just flatly not allowed. Right. Remember when I was in Ethiopia, I had taken.
I was just about to mention that.
I'd taken this really long bus ride, which was the most amazing way to spend $2.40 ever. It was just amazing bus ride. You could see all this volcanic rock and all these, you know, cliff faces and all these like sheep herders and caravans of camels, and the terrain was so bizarre. It was amazing. But I had gone out to this place called Tigray, which is where they have the rock-hewn churches, where essentially the churches are built into the rocks. And the only way you could get to them is like they dig out little holes in the earth, like say big, and you put your toes in it and you crawl up them. Amazing. So I'm like, I'm doing that. When I got there, they're like, oh no, women can't do it. And I was like, what? Like, no, women can't do it. Only men can climb the rocks. And I'm like, I'll show your ass, bitch. I'm climbing. So instead, I went to the border of Eritrea. Did you hear about the Danakil?
No.
It's the hottest place on Earth, and actually, as far as the land, it's the it's the lowest place on the Earth. It was freaking insane, and we had to hire guards. It was the Melike, the Tigrayan. The tribe that shaves their teeth into points.
Yep.
Do you know? We had to hire some of them to get there because the Eritrean army was there in the mountains. So we had to hire them, and they had machine guns and everything. And then we went, and it's where the salt beds are on the border of Eritrea and Ethiopia, which is why they're pissed, because Ethiopia got all the salt mines, but Ethiopia has all the salt mines, but Eritrea has the ocean. So it's kind of like, they don't work together anymore because they would harvest the salt and then ship it and sell it. Yeah. So now they can't sell it. So they have to go all the way back via camel with these huge blocks of salt that they mine out of the ground. It's unbelievable. But anyway, it was like the reverse of a volcano. It was so low and depressed, and it was sulfur spewing out of the earth. It was crazy. If you ever look, Danakil, or the Danakil. It's the hottest, most volatile place on the earth, they say. It was like being in a Tim Burton movie. It was insane. Like, the earth was like bright turquoise and bright orange because of the sulfur. And it was crazy because there was dead birds laying around everywhere, because if they land on it, they would just die from the gas. It was and like, we couldn't even see. We were like, because it was like 114, and that's when it was cool. And like, we're profusely sweating. You couldn't even see in front of you because you were sweating so much. And I like to sweat. I'm from Texas, and I love, being in the heat. But this was like crazy. I was with two English blokes, and I thought they were going to die. I was like, there's an English bloke, there's a bird, there's another English guy. Wow. But so anyway, that was, I don't know how I deviated into like.
It's cool. We just want to go tangent to tangent to tangent.
Yeah, we visited a few places also that, like there'd be a church, and then there'd be like, oh, well, this is the room that only men can enter. Is like an antechamber of the church, and we go in there and take pictures. We're like, it wasn't all that big. Yeah, the girls would have to stay outside.
Was that the one that you had to go to that was on the little island with the sacred scrolls, like the oldest scrolls?
This is actually one of the ones in I believe it was Lalibela.
Oh, was it Lalibela?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
Is this still in Ethiopia you're talking?
Yeah, Ethiopia.
Cool.
Yeah, but anyway.
I always thought it was pronounced Eritrea, but hearing you say it's how did you say it? How's it?
Eritrea.
Eritrea. Okay, I had my pronunciation or emphasis on the wrong syllable.
You have to put the right emphasis on the right syllable.
Thank you. Yeah, I had Eritrean food once in Washington D.C. I remember that, a big plate, like a huge plate, like 4 foot in diameter, with a big thin bread, and then everyone just with all the different, you're just eating with your hands, and
it's pretty much Ethiopian food.
Damn. No, I loved it.
Say again?
It's called injera.
Injera.
Yeah, my friend calls it carpet lining.
My friends call it dish rags.
Yeah,
it tasted pretty good.
I love me some dish rag.
Yeah, I think it's interesting too, because I think a lot of people who are especially females who are interested in traveling, like the baseline common excuse is like, oh, you have kids, you have family. Oh, I'm a woman, I can't do that. It seems like you've definitely like shattered that mold. Do you run across?
More than that, when I'm traveling, or people like run across me, they're like, oh, you're not married? And I'm like, no. Oh, you kids? I'm like, no. And they're like, husband dead? I'm like, no. Children dead? No, just never did. They're like, oh, I'm sorry. And I'm like, it's okay. I have a vagina that works, really, kind of. But just, I don't know. I just, I felt like, and as a woman, you're right. There's a lot of people that make excuses, but I know some women that just like, bring their kid with them. They just, strap them on their shoulder, just like the local women do. Doesn't stop the local women from climbing up the hill to like carry a huge jerry can of water on their head, back down the hill, carrying the donkey as well with the firewood on the back. This is what local women do. So why can't they do it? Yeah, it's not comfortable. And all these people, and I don't know, I'm sure, a lot of my friends or other women would be like, oh, that's atrocious. It's like we are in such a homogenized community that it really does not help your body, I don't think, to be so homogenized, because you don't have your own immune system. B, culturally, it's too homogenized because your kids are like sitting there on freaking Xbox all day long. It's like, go outside. You want to play with guns? Go outside. And watch them.
Here's a gun. Go outside. Play with it.
You know what I mean? It's like, and there's no reason why. I mean, maybe financially, but at the same time, I was never of wealth. I just kind of, I just traveled very wisely, and I really took advantage of every little situation, and however I could save money to do so, I did. And I roughed it a lot. I mean, not everybody can do that. I mean, at the age I am now, I don't know if I would have traveled like I did 20 years ago. Like I took, you probably know what matatus are. I took a matatu from Nairobi all the way to Western Uganda. It took 6 matatus and 5 days. And it was
explain
one of those.
matatu for anyone who doesn't know what that is.
It's a matatu is, for lack of a better description, a minivan with a sliding side door without the sliding thing. And there's rows and rows of seats. I would say there are 4 rows of seats in the back, right? And then sliding windows, but the seats are compacted, like so compacted. And it says on the side passenger limit 16, but that's kind of like a number that I don't know why they paint that on there, because there's just about 24 people in there.
Wow.
I have been on there with goats on top of me, grandmas sitting on me, 3 or 4 kids, a bucket of fish. It's like you just get crammed in there because, I mean, if you could just get past the smell, by the 3rd day, you can't smell because. And that's why I just didn't bathe, because I'm like, I'm just going to join the party. And maybe my own stink will kill me before someone else's stink will. I don't know. But that was, it's really challenging. But it's part of the adventure. I met some amazing people in doing so. Like I have friends all over, when you travel like the people do, that's when you meet people. I don't want to, this sounds really, I don't know if this sounds really bad or not, but I had another friend that I was traveling with, female, and she was all about the hostels and all about hanging out with other travelers. And I'm like, I didn't freaking come here to hang out with white people. Okay. Yeah. I am not here to hang out with some, guy from New Zealand. No offense. I'm not saying New Zealand or anywhere,
I know. I hate those Kiwis.
No, but anytime I can get closer to the local culture, I prefer to do so. Sometimes is it the safest thing? Well, I don't know.
I think driving a car every day to work sometimes isn't that safe. It depends on, you have to put things into perspective and see what you want to do.
Yeah, but Matt, we live in a society where it's like, I lived in LA, and if I went down the street to the taco shop at the wrong time, I could just get hit by a stray bullet.
Yeah.
So, you know what I mean? In New York, I could just accidentally fall in front of the bus and it's my time, So I figure my time is my time. I do push the boundaries. I don't do something completely stupid, but why worry about, if I do this, I'm going to die, Otherwise, I'd never do anything. I wouldn't go, hey, let's go swim with tiger sharks. That sounds awesome. If it's your time, it's your time. And I don't think that, being too extra cautious is going to keep you from dying at an age that kind of destined to die at. I don't know. Maybe that's a little hippy skippy or a little kind of woohoo out there.
It will give you a nice, boring life, though.
Yeah, no. Why? I don't know. And these days, I don't know. I'm trailing off, but because we had talked about the humanitarian thing, and we'll kind of come back to that. We can
trail off. Yeah.
I don't feel like if I'm not contributing to something in a positive way, why the hell am I wasting oxygen and water and making more refuse on the planet? Yeah. If I can't do something positive in some way, and it doesn't have to be on a grand scale, but it can be on a small scale. It's whatever you can do to, earn your keep on the planet in a kind of a community way or a karmic way, or, so that's how I feel, why I am privileged to be on the planet right now, why I am privileged to be able to travel, be here, be a woman that is in this generation, not 100 years ago, or 200 years ago, or why I wasn't born in Papua New Guinea when I definitely would be sold, for dog teeth, to the local, next villagers or whatever, that I have the choices and I have the opportunity. And I think it's sad and it's horribly wasteful of someone's independence, women and men, if you're given an opportunity like we have, that we're so lucky to not go out and do something that's challenging, to not be so grateful that you have the mobility, physically have the mobility. Secondly, that you have the opportunity as citizens, anyone who's watching, on Skype or has a Twitter account or a Facebook account, if you're online, then you can freaking get out and do something. Yeah. Because if you have, capacity to sit in front of a computer, you're not doing that horrible. You have the access to internet, electricity, and, a society that can, you can catapult into something else. So I think it's horribly wasteful not to engage in it. Yeah.
And I think an important part that you said is that I think people who try to go after a grand thing before they've done anything really don't do anything. And I think it's those that actually make an impact on a individual or a small community basis. That's how things grow organically. And I think that's important. It's like you're getting immediate context with something, not sitting in your room thinking, oh, how can I change the world? Right? It's anyone that does always starts with they have a local foundation down in their community with 5 people, and then it grows from there. And I think that that's how things happen. That's how things grow. I heard something else recently about, I don't know, it was a talk, some Indian guru guy talking about fears and things of that sort. And he said something about one of the, not even the balance, but more or less the challenge that we find ourselves in between as human beings is we're avoiding our death. We're pretending that is not an inevitable phase of our existence. But we're also not really choosing to fully live. We somehow find ourselves in this middle, half-ass, mediocre ground. And it seems like, I think once you realize that we're here that we can, sometimes I fall into the phase of not always recognizing, but then when I go back, and I think traveling for me teaches me that a lot. It's like, holy shit, I have hot water. I can turn on my sink and have hot water. Like I can get on the computer and have this conversation with you guys and enrich my philosophies and my mindset. Like not everyone has those opportunities. What am I going to do with them? And sure, life is challenging and things are scary, but I think when you plow in that direction, and especially when you have those desires, that's when you do something extraordinary.
Yeah, even coming back from Burning Man, like you spend a week in the desert and without any shower or anything, and it just makes you so appreciative of running water and soap and things like that. I got back, I was just like, oh, shower, you don't have to travel far away from home to get that kind of experience.
Yeah. Yeah, we were making a joke recently just about if all of a sudden the supermarkets shut down, all of society would just be screwed. Like we don't realize how much. So I was even telling someone recently about entrepreneurial things I've done, and someone's like, "Oh wow, you're really, what do they call it? Like you're a self-made or
self-sufficient."
Not even self-sufficient. They said self-made or like you're really smart. You did whatever, and I'm like, yeah, but if you think about it, I'm leveraging, I'm standing on the shoulders of hundreds of years of civilization to build these tools, these infrastructures that allow me to exist on this plane and this level to be able to we're creating a podcast now, but are we really, or are we just sort of this small dot on top of a huge pyramid of technology and iteration and infrastructure that's built this out in a sense? It really sort of, I don't know, it paints an interesting perspective for me.
So what are these interesting entrepreneurial adventures that you're leading right now for both of you? There's the host questioning the guest questioning.
I like it.
It's good. I kind of have, we'll say, 3 or 4. My main project right now is LLC University. I teach entrepreneurs how to form limited liability companies across all 50 states. It's an online education platform. I have a blog around travel, personal development, things of that sort.
Yeah.
Scott and I have this podcast about adding adventure to your life, whether that's adventure travel, lifestyle design, things of that sort. I saw the internet. I began traveling in 2007 and was selling real estate in Philadelphia and really enjoyed it and learned a lot, grew a lot through that experience. But from that, I every time I traveled, I didn't like having to come back, like going away for 3 or 4 weeks, which seemed like long travel at the time, and then having to come back to a normal life for, again, 9 months. I didn't like the having to come back. I started to not like cold weather. A lot of experiences, books I was reading, people I talked to, I just kind of got a lot of signs and things just, and I had also began to learn about the concept. I love learning and I love teaching, and I realized that I could teach and reach essentially anybody in the world that could find me. I could teach the things, my experience, my wisdom, the things that I had inside my head. I could extrapolate those and put those into a digital format and sustain myself and help other people. So I have one that's very sort of pragmatic and structured, which is LLC University, and I have sort of something that's just sort of loose where I can blog and talk about adventure travel and things of that sort. And I know that I'll iterate that and refine that as the years go on and have some sort of business model around that. But those are my, because I use so much technology, I'm really thinking how much of this am I actually doing? Sure, I created a website, but I didn't write HTML. I didn't think of PHP. I didn't configure my server, right? I'm not,
it hurts. Doing it. Hold on. It's hurting. Hold on.
Come on, Matt, dumb it down.
Can we talk about not bathing again?
Well, I getting too technical there. Those are my current entrepreneurial endeavors. Those are my focal points.
I love your tea set, by the way. It's very English.
Oh yeah, isn't it? It's so funny, right? In Rome.
I think I heard you earlier. You said,
"Oh wow."
I don't know what word you said. If it was like now, or you said one word that had an English accent in it.
Yeah, I'm a parrot. It's ridiculous. Wherever I go, I start like with this crazy accent. My friends are like, "What are you doing?" And I'm like, "What do you mean?" They're like, "You're going to offend everybody." And I'm like, "What are you talking about?" And I'm like, "What?"
"Hi there, governor."
Yeah. And when I am in Uganda, I am talking like this because this is how they dictate to you.
Yeah.
Have you seen this? This is so new. And, like everywhere you go, it's like everybody has this different way of speaking. And I don't know. I'm a parrot. It's ridiculous. Like I start talking, but it's really cute because actually one day, my friend was making me feel bad about it. She's like, "Why do you do that? It's so annoying." But I had this Rwandese lady that I was working with, an amazing woman who worked with the YWCA, who was creating all these amazing sustainable projects in Rwanda. She actually got asylum to Michigan, and I went to visit her in Michigan.
Oh, that's where I'm at.
Yeah. Shout out Michigan.
Yeah. She's from Paw Paw. She lives in Paw Paw near Grand Rapids.
Oh wow, yeah, right.
Yeah, for some reason there's a huge pocket of Rwandese immigrants in Paw Paw. Who knew? Anyway, but she was like, "I want to thank you because always you're the only American person I can ever understand the way you talk." And I'm like, "See, it is working." There's a reason I am talking like this.
Yeah, like I get called out on that all the time when I go to places and like, why are you talking weird? And it's because that's the way people talk. And like if you go, if you go to India, you talk like this, and you're not trying to make fun of the way they're talking. They actually understand you better if you talk the same way. Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, the girl I'm seeing right now, she's like, "You have like 12 different voices." She's like, "When you're on the phone, you talk like this. When you talk to me, you talk like that. When you're tired, you talk like this." She's like, "I've seen you speak to your French friends who don't speak English as a first language, and you speak almost like broken English." And but I think it's kind of a natural. We learn to adapt ourselves to the environment and to who we're around. The thing that always bugs me is when I'm with someone when English isn't their first language, and someone else is just like using jargon and speaking really fast. I'm like, do you really think that they're going to understand you? You just
talk louder. The louder you talk, the more they'll understand you.
So it's a good trait. I'm glad that you two share that as well.
Yeah.
Eden, earlier I think you definitely embody and you're definitely in your feminine, and you also have this internal toughness to be able to, kind of hold your ground, so to say. Were there things or events that you can look back to that sort of formulated that, or did you actually like consciously go out and formulate that, or was it a little bit of both?
I think it was a lot. I think, like I said, because my mother was handicapped, I had to kind of create this kind of boundary thing to protect her as well when we go out and stuff. Like I always felt protective of her because she wasn't often walking on her own, or she was in a cane or in a walker or something. So I felt kind of protective. So I guess I had this kind of like protecting kind of thing going on as well. I mean, I was very sporty as a child. I loved horses, and I just grew up really fast as well when I was modeling. You know, it's very can be a very treacherous place for a young woman to be in the modeling industry, because it's rough. You know, there's a lot of things that can go wrong if you don't keep your head about you. You know, drugs and all kinds of eating disorders and abuse and all these things. So I think in that, and I just had to survive. I was a survivor. That I kind of got a bit of a tough skin at a younger age. And then when I really started traveling, I just realized that, you know, you don't know anything, and you just really have to take in your environment, and you have to really be quiet and take it in and realize what's going on around you before you react or act, because that will keep you safe. You know, you really have to understand the culture. You have to be patient with people and yourself. You have to completely erase whatever American or European or Mexican, whatever configuration you've grown up with. You have to kind of put that away for a while. If you're really going to function in that society, you really have to kind of put that away, because it's not where you're from, and you really have to understand that. And that's why, as tourists, you know, I mean, we get a bad rap because people just go and expect shit to be like it is, you know, around the corner. You're like, you know, then stay there. Then stay there and eat at McDonald's, you know, stay in whatever small podunk town you're in, you know, try to go with an open mind. I'm not saying no one should, you have to completely disengage from your own personality or identity, but, you know, just open and be open to experiencing other cultures in a way that the other people are, you know, giving to you as well. You know, I mean, because people do give you beautiful treasures when you're on the road, you know, small things, you know, just smiles and a cup of tea or directions or anything, you know. It's really amazing if you just kind of, you know, settle your own ego and you're open to other things, that a lot of things can come to you. And I mean, like I said, I know that, I don't know how this sounds, but I know I have guardian angels, because I have put myself in situations that were a little bit precarious. You know, I had a Rwandese friend who, her husband was, actually, she was a Rwandese by marriage living in Rwanda, but she was half Congolese. And they had killed her husband during the genocide, and she went back to Congo, and she was having problems with the government because they said that she didn't pay her taxes properly. So they bombed her whole place. Yeah, she was really sad because she was a really entrepreneurial woman. She had 3 stalls. You've probably seen. It's just like a storefront, like a small storefront, and then above like a little tiny apartment, you know, and that's where they lived. You know, that's where she raised 3 kids, you know, and Rwandese standards, or I mean, Congolese standards, living very well, you know, like an upper crust businesswoman, not rich, but, you know, an entrepreneurial businesswoman. And they bombed her place. And she said, you know, and she said, you know, if you go with me, then I know that they'll probably leave you alone and probably leave me alone. So she's like, will you go with me? Well, at the time, this is several years ago, they had just, the rebel guerrillas had just killed a family of mountain gorillas, the silverbacks. And it was huge, and it was a horrible thing because there aren't many silverbacks gorillas left in the volcans. It's called Parc de Volcans Mountains. And it creates a lot of draw for tourists to go visit the gorillas, which was one of the most amazing experiences of my life. But anyway, so they had killed this family of gorillas, and it was a huge thing. So they weren't letting anyone through that wasn't a resident, like a Congolese resident. So I had to I snuck in. I don't know how. I was just chatting with everyone because you couldn't get your passport stamped, and they couldn't let you, they couldn't stamp your passport, and they weren't letting anyone through. No UN workers, nothing, because they were afraid it would leak out too much. This was several years ago before internet and all that was so big. But so I snuck in. Just, I don't know how. I was like speaking broken French to this person, speaking some Swahili to this person. And my friend was like milling around talking to everybody. And somehow I slipped through. But getting out was the problem. And she arranged for me to go back through this export company that was selling woven baskets and woven carpets, rugs. So I had to lay under 2 carpets and under all these baskets and in a matatu type thing, dusty and nasty. And I had to lay underneath it, and they drove me across the border back to Rwanda.
Wow.
And I'll never forget, I emailed when I got back to Rwanda, and my treat was to stay at a place that had like electricity and internet. So I went back to Rwanda, and I emailed my friends. I'm like, I feel so safe to be back in Rwanda. They're like, yeah, that doesn't sound right.
Isn't that genocide country?
Congo, it was crazy. Congo was literally, I was very alert in Congo. It really felt like when you hear and you think about deepest, darkest Africa, and not deepest, darkest like, Livingston's type where you're in the jungle, but like the darkness of the people that are so tortured by the government and by each other that it's so hostile. That's what I consider the deepest, darkest. I mean, it literally felt like if I would have lit a match and dropped it, the whole thing would have exploded. I mean, there was so much like energy, negative energy in the street, and it was just so crazy. And there's a volcano there as well, where it's Park Volcan, and you really could feel the energy of like the people that were volcanic, and it was crazy.
Shit.
So it was. I witnessed like fights in the streets, and I'm not talking like fights. I'm talking like people ripping each other apart like wild animals. It was like holy shit, Like I was about to pick up this like broken stick and like.
I don't even think intense. Intense isn't even the word for that. It's something else.
Yeah, it's electrifying, and it's also addictive. Mm. It's addictive.
I had that question written down here. It's like, what are one of your? Like, I wrote down something like, "What's your craziest travel experience?" And I don't even know if that was it, but those two sound. The rug thing. I watched a movie recently, which was really neat too. I was working in a restaurant a while back, and one of the guys was from Guatemala, and he talked about his journey on how he basically got a ride up to Mexico, snuck across the border, and traveled from Arizona all the way up to New Jersey. And I think a lot of people, especially, people who aren't exposed to this type of information and awareness, kind of look down upon or don't really understand what that situation is like. And he said, watch the movie La Misma Luna, which is something in regards to Under the Same Moon. And it's about this kid whose mother is working in Los Angeles. He's in Mexico. And when he sneaks across the border, it reminded me of your story when you were between the two carpets, because he's like under the floor of this van. And it's this whole entire journey, but it really paints this perspective of like, what is it like to have that lifestyle and have to go on that quest and that journey to make it to like a promised land in a sense. So it was really interesting. I think that your story reminded me of that as well as a bunch of other things. So
yeah.
And speaking of the DRC too, can you tell us a little bit about how you became, your first experiences in Africa, and then how you became involved with your charitable work that you've done over there? Some of your experiences doing that.
Yes. After I had my kind of stint with modeling and stuff, I ended up working in movies as a makeup artist, and then later, a few little producing jobs, and I really got kind of sucked into, making the money, and I was traveling a ton within the States, and I just kind of got sucked into this Hollywood scene thing, and the vying for power and for celebrity and for money and all this, and I just remember, I was doing a lot, I was doing cool work that, most of my friends and a lot of people were like, wow, you live such a rock star lifestyle. You're like zipping around to work with this celebrity, and you're in, you're in New York this week, and you're in Vegas next week, and Miami in 2 weeks, and, you're like all over the place. And it was cool. And I got kind of sucked in, and my head started to get a little crazy, like, okay, crazy anyway, but a different kind of crazy. And I just remember like, things that people would say would start like searing me. Like someone was like, why are you driving that old truck? You make a lot of money and you can't drive that kind of thing, when you're hobnobbing and you're going to these places with these people. Mm-hmm. And then someone said, oh, you would look so much younger if you just got a little Botox. And I was like, and then someone else was like, why do you have that handbag? It's like, look at my new Prada handbag. And I'm like, all these things were like, they just kind of were I felt like what? And then I realized that I was like kind of buying into it a little bit as well.
Yeah.
And then one day I was just like, I woke up and I remember I went out on a bender, and I mean a freaking bender. I got thrown out of a club for drinking too much scotch. I was like hell bent. It was scary. That I didn't kill someone or kill myself, or didn't end up.
Wow.
But yeah, I don't even remember how I got home. My car was parked in the middle of the street, and this is in LA. In the middle of the street, I had one boot on, like my leather skirt was halfway up my face. Like one boot on. I couldn't find my car keys. Where are my car keys? Where are my house keys? Oh, they're still in the door of my house. My door was wide open. This is in fucking LA. Sorry.
Oh,
we curse all the time.
But I was like, okay, something isn't right. Like, this is not happy.
Yeah.
So I just like,
this is all the shit that explode. This is all the explosion of everything that's been under the surface.
Yeah, because I allowed myself to just get affected, because you're just in the media. Doesn't help. The media is constantly, you have to have this to, to feel happy. You have to own this kind of car to feel cool. You have to have this type of looking girlfriend to, be a man. You have to, what I mean? This bullshit, So, and you can't help it because media is like crammed on your throat everywhere you turn, magazines, TV, and I just realized that even though I tried to keep it at bay, like I don't even own a television. I have never myself owned a television my whole life. Like awesome. Never. Nor a microwave. Nor have I eaten McDonald's. Okay, I lied. I had a friend.
We're changing your intro. Eden Orfanos, never owned a TV, never eaten that, never eaten McDonald's. We're gonna change your intro in our notes on the show. To never owned a TV, never had a microwave, and never ate McDonald's.
Eden, let's say the penultimate Luddite. Let's say.
I don't know what that means. What's a Luddite?
Luddite, this someone that shuns technology.
Oh, okay.
Oh no! I'm not shunning technology. It's just, I think that I'm about Big Brother and about like the TV kind of feeding you stuff.
I just posted something on Facebook. It was about like literally how news is bad for your health. I haven't had cable in 6 years, more or less. I don't own a TV either. I don't think Scott watches much TV. That's not your TV in the background, is it, Scott?
No, this is my dad's TV. He doesn't watch it.
No. I'm not I'll watch TV every once in a while.
No, bash it all you want because I believe the same things you're about to say. So
yeah. So, but anyway, let me go back to what was I saying again? Okay, hold on.
About Africa.
So again, after
you're not in Africa yet. You're still at the breakdown.
The breakdown.
The breakdown. I just realized, I just called all my clients and I just took 2 weeks off, and on my computer I researched just a bunch of different stuff, just anything that was interesting me. I just started researching it, and I thought, when I was a little girl, what did I want to be? I didn't want to be this. It's cool and all that. I'm making amazing money, and I'm traveling, and I'm working with celebrities, and that's all cool and all. But what did you want to be when you were a little girl? Like, what did you want to be? And I remember I either wanted to be a surgeon or I wanted to be Jacques Cousteau or Jane Goodall.
Huh.
And where I
Who's
was,
Jane Goodall?
Jane Goodall is the one who does the ape study. She owns a bunch of different organizations, founded Roots and Shoots. She did the comparison of human behavior in war and primates. Interesting. If you Google her,
she worked with the silverback gorillas a lot in Congo.
There was a movie about her?
There was a movie about her. Yep. Yeah. Into the Mist, or what is it? Gorillas in the Mist, something like that, right?
Gorillas in the Mist was actually Diane Fossey.
Right. I'm thinking of.
And Jane Goodall,
she's with chimps, yeah.
But she's still alive. She's like one of my icons.
Yeah, I saw her speak in Birmingham a few years ago.
Oh wow, yeah. Cool. She does a lot of speaking, and actually, I read an amazing article like 100 years ago in Playboy magazine about her. Like she did an article in Playboy about warring behavior in humans and primates, the comparison. Anyway,
so it is true then. You people do just read Playboy for the interesting articles.
I did. So the point was that when I was a kid and I wanted to do these things, I'm like, where am I in that? Where am I in this desire that I had when I was a child that I wanted to do one of these things? And why did I want to do one of these things? I wanted to be a surgeon because I liked fixing things. I wanted to be Jacques Cousteau because I love discovering things. And I wanted to be Jane Goodall because she has to deal with sociology and also cultures and having people understand like primates and culture, but not just primates, understanding like local cultures and local peoples and protecting their tribal ways or their cultural ways and not let them get homogenized into society. So I thought, okay, I'm not anywhere near that. So whatever it takes for me to get to that, I'm going to start doing that. And I just started like volunteering at the women's center, like the homeless women's shelter. I started just doing whatever I could, small humanitarian things, charity things. And then like 4 months later, I ended up in Uganda working with an AIDS orphanage, and was a division of Habitat for Humanities. We were building homes for these AIDS orphans, and it changed my life. And I went from living this high life, LA, whatever, to being in the middle of nowhere with no running water, no electricity, in the middle of this village in eastern Uganda for 2 months, like sleeping on the floor and having goats and chickens run over me. And it was like the richest I had ever felt. And I was like, okay, I'm getting closer to it. I don't have to be that extreme all the time, but I felt more alive because I was dealing with the community. I was working with my hands. I was really alive. There was no bullshit around. There was no, there was no flash. There was no alcohol. There was no drugs. There was no fashion. There was no nightlife. There was just fucking being alive. And it was really a cool wake up call. And then I knew enough that I had to get myself to that because I would have ended up like God knows what. But anyway, so that's kind of how it started. And being in that circumstance and seeing the need and just seeing so much need there, I mean, it's overwhelming. But there was one little girl in particular that really stole my heart. She was not only an AIDS orphan, but she was deaf mute. And I was there in that village for like 3 weeks. So every day, like all the kids, we were this sounds kind of crazy, but in that area, they hadn't really seen white people very much because it's so remote. So we were like the new toy, it's like everybody was like, whoa. When we were driving down, you'd walk down and like old people would like run in their homes because they thought we were ghosts. Kids would run out of them and like run up to us and try to touch us and then run away because they were scared of our white skin. They were like pulling on my hair all the time and my hairy arms. And it was just hysterical. But so there was a lot of commotion around us, even though there wasn't anything to do there, in the village community, we were like the entertainment. So just some days, you'd be working, you'd be building this house, schlepping machanga, which is a Swahili word for mortar, and bricks and making bricks and all this stuff. And then we'd be visiting the AIDS orphanage, which was, really sad. And you'd just be freaking exhausted and out of your head. And you're kind of like, hey, kid, I don't speak Swahili, but back off because I'm tired.
Right.
But in this one little girl who's deaf mute, like always registered. She always knew where I was in my head and in my heart. Like she always knew, like sometimes she'd just come and sit beside me and wouldn't do anything. She wouldn't even move. And sometimes she'd like throw a ball at me or I would teach her to sew. But she always knew where the other kids like sometimes just didn't have a clue where they're like tugging on you and, wanting you to play with them. And you're like, dude, I just want to like wash my face with my baby wipe and chill out, But this one was like really sensitive, and she used to do math homework in the dirt and stuff to show me that even though she wasn't going to school, she knew how to do math. And so I was like really taken with her, and I just had this connection with her that she really was something special, and she never missed a beat. She was deaf mute, and she used to communicate or point or look or do things, but she never missed a beat. Like she always noticed if someone had spilt water, or if like another kid was beating up another kid, or if a chicken ran away or anything. So she was constantly aware of everything around her. I went back to the States after that, and I just had it in my head that, I don't know, I would really like to help this kid out in particular. I went back to the States, and I woke up like for almost 2 weeks, I woke up in a cold sweat, just thinking about what is her demise? How many times will she get raped before she dies? How many, will she get malaria? How many times will she get beaten because she can't tell anyone because she's, deaf mute? She has nowhere to go. Will she be sleeping with the livestock again? So I couldn't bear all these nightmares I was having. And I thought, you're freaking, meaning myself, you're freaking well off comparatively to most people on this planet. Do whatever the fuck it takes to get over there and make something happen for this kid. I don't care what it is, but you can freaking manage. You know what I mean? Like, just don't go out for 2 weekends and you have enough money to buy a plane ticket over there. Don't go out for a month and you have money to donate to probably get her to school. So just fucking cut it out, get serious, go do something that's beyond you, and that was that whole like beyond you kind of thing clicked in, do something beyond you. So that's what I did. And 6 months later, I had raised enough money to not raise enough money, but I had acquired enough money to buy a plane ticket. And 8 months later, I had enough money to, get over there. I sublet my apartment in LA and off I went. And I was there for 3 months. And I just, by the grace of God, Goddess, Shiva, Allah, Buddha, just the right place at the right time and the right people. Because I think that I was doing something for the greater good. And I really had a good instinct about it, but I was also very open to help and assistance. That it just happened. I think that when you're doing the right thing for yourself, things manifest. I know that sounds kind of hippie skippy, whatever, but I think
we get hippie skippy every now and then.
Pardon?
We get hippie skippy every now and then.
Okay, but if you're in the right place at the right time and you're really doing something that you're supposed to be doing, the fucking universe is like, okay, you're working it. I'm going to help you out here. I'm down with that. I'm going to help you out. So I was just there and just created this little tiny school for these 4 little girls that were ranging from 5 years old to 8 years old, and just got them a safe place where they could learn sign language. They could have a community with themselves. We got them clothing. Well, that was actually next year, but just had a safe community for them where they felt part of something, and they had each other to learn sign language. And it just started like that, just that simply. And I mean, to tell you, that was with $200. $200 that started, later it was, in the 2000s, because it was more kids and we got them clothing, we got them a real school and bought them real pens and papers, and you know what I mean? It kind of grew like that, but it was, just, letting go, letting the universe, and just doing something I believed in,
And I agree. I think the universe brings you the resources, the things you need to go through and grow through to, especially when you take bold action like that. It's definitely been the case in my life.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's a powerful story, and thank you for sharing. That was...
Were you, when you expanded the school, was it still for the deaf mute children? Was there a big population there?
It was a sign language school. So it was essentially, I helped the teacher get like a 3-bedroom apartment, and I say apartment loosely, essentially a hut, a shack with 2 separations in it, no running water. We actually did get a water pump finally, no electricity, but I did get them a little solar power thing that they could have, like a little cell phone that they could charge up. But essentially just, and then my friend of a friend, who was a pastor, and his brother's best friend was the headmaster to school. They gave us a storage unit to make into a schoolroom. And so we did that. And then the next year we got like proper desks donated, and then it just kind of grew like that. So the community, they didn't have like a sign language school or anywhere for deaf, mute, or special children in that area, all the way until West Kampala, which was like 240 Ks, and all the way north to Gulu, which is like another 300 Ks. So there was nothing like right in that area that was accessible for kids, there. So it kind of like just reached out, and through just word of mouth, other kids started learning about it and started coming like that. So, and there was different kinds of abuse, and it wasn't just deaf mute kids. It was, kids that had even cerebral palsy, that were special and were kind of outcasts in other, school typical environments they weren't accepted into, and kids that are blind. And so it just kind of expanded that, but it was mainly a sign language school.
Right.
For these girls at first. So
did you keep in contact as much as possible with that one initial girl? Were you able to?
Yeah, absolutely. She was my draw. I mean, every time I went there, I saw her. Felita is her name, and I don't know if you got a chance to look at my website blog thing, but there's pictures of her when she's like really tiny, and then there's pictures of her last time she was there. She like had bajungas bigger than me. I'm like, oh my god, oh my god. So which and where is where the next kind of phase goes. I realized, and so in this, there's another aspect that I kind of felt like, okay, I'm the heroine. I have helped them. I'm like do-gooder. Yay, me, big ego. Yeah, look what I've done. I've saved these girls' lives. Kind of, you know what I mean? You kind of can get like that. But you have to have a little bit of that too when you're asking for fundraising and you're trying to get more things from them, from the government and things like that. But it's a fine line between like doing good and like your ego exploding. So lastly, when I went there, I realized that these girls were like not girls anymore. They were teenagers. And it was like I was just fighting against the clock of when they were going to get pregnant or when they were going to get, if they were going to get raped or if they were, going to get married and stop their education, which, is fine and up to them. But so I realized that the next step was I really needed to liaise with different organizations that already had sustainable projects going on, and it was just a little beyond me. And years ago I thought, I'm going to do this and I'm going to do this and I'm going to, create all these dynamic programs. But, I couldn't do it by myself. And I did try to start a proper organization, and it just, you live and you learn. Yeah. I didn't have the right people in my ring. They actually weren't in my ring at all. They're in their own ring, and I was kind of their little puppet. I don't know why someone would, want to. They wanted to do good, and they thought, oh, well, she's already got something going on. And anyway, that's a whole other story. Mm-hmm. But the organization that I kind of was led to or created wasn't exactly what I had hoped it would be. Mm-hmm. So I had to take myself out of it and the ego out of it and realize that the girls that were older, I had to kind of push them in other directions to get them to advance themselves. So the last couple times I was there, I've been having meetings with bigger organizations that are really established and kind of getting them involved with different kinds of self-sustaining projects, whether it be sewing or nursing or farming or things like that. So I kind of let it grow in that way and took myself completely out, because it's like it has nothing to do with me. Yeah. It really has to do with them creating lives for themselves. So, but that was painful too, because I'm like, I created this. Yeah. I did this with my own blood and guts. I did this with my own money. I. And I'm like, hang on, fucker. I? Where's I? It's like, no, there's no I. So it's like, it was a bit of a shock too, because even though I was doing good, there was still an I involved. I did this, and I can do this, and I did this. And it's like, okay, hang on, just take the I out for a minute and just realize that the reason you started this was for this little girl to have a future. And the whole goal is for this little girl, who's not a little girl, to still have a future. Yeah. So that's kind of where I am with that. And, I'm really proud of what I done, but at the same time, it's like I'm really proud of what the girls have done and how people have rallied around me to help me to get them to that stage. And I feel really fortunate that I've had the opportunity to give of myself, because I got more I got a lot more back than I gave, I think. But that's just, as far as personal growth, what I learned from those kids and those experiences was pretty huge. So
sounds like an amazing experience, and it sounds like you're also. I know that you said earlier that you're kind of regrouping and you're reevaluating what you want to be doing with this type of work. Besides that, what else are you up to in your life? What's going on currently, or what do you see? What do you have planned?
Well, I kind of I believe in the whole pendulum thing. Yeah, like you can't just swing one way. You know, so I'm being a little bit, I don't know if the word is selfish, but I'm kind of getting back into my more creative side because I needed to feed that. Because let me tell you, a couple of years ago, I was just so exhausted and so thin that I had nothing else to give because I had kind of given as much as I could. And I really I wanted to forget myself because, again, I was trying to take the I out of it. So I'm like, forget myself. But then if you forget yourself, you have nothing to give because you have nothing to build on because you're not there. So I've been kind of like trying to recreate myself. I know that sounds odd, but I didn't really, for whatever reason, I didn't have a lot of support as far as having an organization that I could attach myself to, a big organization that I felt happy with. So I kind of was still a lone ranger when I was doing these fundraising things and all this activity in Rwanda and Uganda. So I think I'm taking a step back and learning from what I had done and just and reevaluating the situation. I'm kind of having me time, which isn't to say that I'm not still doing community work and things like that.
I think it's a super important part of any process.
Yeah, it is. And I'm not admitting defeat, nor do I think it's actually a fail. It's like because these kids are, you know, at a different stage in their lives, and whether it's good, bad, or indifferent, at least they have options now, you know, where they didn't have as many options before.
When did you initially start it? How far back does this go when you were
2005.
Okay.
Yeah. So almost 10 years. So
my God,
but anyway,
2005 sounds like it's 3 years ago, but it really is almost 10 years.
I know, right?
Jeez. So, we're in the teens, right? My goodness.
It's crazy. Yeah. So right now I'm actually I'm playing around with my photography because I have seen so many amazing things in my life, and I've had so many amazing opportunities to capture different scenarios, whether it be landscapes, people. I love cultivating people. It's really interesting, and I have this idea. I had myself, and I have had a lot of breast cancer and cancer scares in my family. Several of women in my family have died of breast cancer. And so I'm going to be doing this project where I'm doing photography for women that are in some stage of cancer or any type of like near-death experience, like people that are kind of suffering in that, doing something to kind of ego build or to get themselves back to where they feel happy and they feel whole and human. And so in documenting this in photography and like making them kind of iconoclastic in a way through photography,
beautiful,
is kind of a cool thing, you know, and like showing someone a side of themselves that they don't look at every day is really interesting. You know, when someone looks at a photo that I've done and they're like, oh my God, this is so cool. I can't believe I look like this. I'm like, well, you do, but you don't see yourself like that. I see you like that. Maybe someone else sees you like that, but you're pretty awesome, you know? And so it's pretty cool to kind of like help people on that level. It's really intimate. It's very, very intimate. Yeah. And it's really, it's fun and it's cool. It's creative and it helps people on a small scale. Like I remember I just shot this one girl who had some really hellish things going on, and it just really boosted her ego, and now she's like got a big head. She's a bit of an egotist.
Good job.
Part of the process. Might be part of the process for her.
Yeah, right. No, but it was really good because she really like saw herself differently, and she was really going through a process. So it's an interesting and intimate way to kind of, I don't know, boost someone's ego or let themselves see themselves in a different light or recognize their beauty, you know? And so that's kind of what I've been having fun with recently, which will lead to a bigger thing. But I have a couple concepts for kind of combining rough sleepers or homeless people and art, which is a concept that I've had for a long time, which I'm really excited about, as well as kind of a community building project with that has to do with art and creation and also the hospitality industry.
Awesome.
So yeah,
sounds like you're up to some pretty cool stuff.
Yeah. It's you know, you always have to evolve and recreate yourself, and you know, I don't know. I think that's kind of why I'm here. to kind of.
And it's good. Like I like how you said, let the pendulum swing, because I realized that with myself. You just can't be full force, all gears and forward motion. There really is an ebb and flow to our own internal processes, and I think just to the way the world evolves in a sense.
For sure.
Looking at time here, we're probably going to close out in a bit. We typically close out with a nice little quote I have prepared. But before we do that, Scott, do you want to ask any final? Do you want to ask Eden anything else?
I'm going to ask you what I get asked a lot. You've traveled a lot. What has been your favorite country?
I don't think I've been there yet.
Really?
No. It's like having a different meal. It's like you're in the mood for something at a certain time, aren't you? Yeah. So it's like, I remember like
that's a good analogy. I like that.
You know what I mean? Like you're not always like, pizza's amazing, but you're not always in the mood for pizza. Thai is amazing, but you're not always in the mood for it. It's where you are in your head and your body, and it's like whatever's going on with you, emotionally, sexually, spiritually, like whatever. So I don't know. I mean, one of my most when I first got to Europe, I remember working in Paris. I had been working there, and I'd been so stressed out because I'd been working, and I was like super skinny and super broke. And I remember getting to Spain. Well, I had to be for modeling, I was like freaking, Anyway, but I remember I took a train down. I finally made enough money to take the train down to Biarritz and San Sebastian, Spain, which is the closest place I could get to in Spain from France. I remember stepping off the train and like looking around me and the smells and the energy there and all that. It was like, wow, I've come home, And so I just felt like I was meant to be there at that time. And then I remember the first time I went to Uganda. It was a hellish, like crazy travel to get there. It was like 3 plane rides. I had to take a plane from LA to New York, and New York to Dubai. Spent 2 days in Dubai, which was crazy. And then so ostentatious and like so fake and really bizarro, but also really raw and beautiful at the same time. Well, it was back in the day, way back in the day. And then traveling to Kampala, and then from Kampala to Kigali, Nairobi to Kigali, Kampala, taking a 8-hour bus ride, and then taking an hour and a half matatu ride into the village. So it was like 28 hours of like solid travel. Mm-hmm. So tired. But then I got out of this matatu. I remember like rubbing my ear and then going like that, and the whole side of my shirt was red from the dirt. It was awesome.
Oh yeah, right.
So I couldn't even hear. I had so much red dirt in my ear. I was like, what? I was like, oh, cool. Stepped out of the matatu, the truck van, and just stepped on the ground, and it was like I went, shit, I'm alive. I was like, I'm alive, and it felt like this. I felt like the ground had sucked my feet into the ground, and that this giant snake had just come and wrapped itself around me and squeezed the piss out of me. And I was like, oh shit, this is going to be good.
Wow.
And yeah, so that's what drew me to Uganda, for the last 10 years, again and again, like this really raw, amazing experience. But it was really intense, and I didn't go there to holiday. Like people would go, oh, how did you like the whitewater rafting there? I'm like, never done it. They're like, oh, how'd you like the bungee jumping? I'm like, never done it. They're like, how was Merchant Falls? I'm like, haven't been there. They're like, what do you do there? I'm like, deal with deaf mute orphans. And they're like, can you go back twice a year? And I'm like, yeah. And I don't know. So that was cool. But
you've been called there in a sense.
Pardon? Yeah. It was totally different. But 2 of my favorite places on the planet are Zanzibar, which is amazing. Mm-hmm. I love Zanzibar. And Papua New Guinea was probably the most culturally diverse and bizarre place I have ever been.
Haven't been. It's been on my list for a while. Yeah.
Whoa,
Borneo and
PNG. It was insane. It was crazy time. Yeah. It was insane. Yeah. We had to trade beetle nuts and chickens to get into this village on canoe. We had to, on canoe down this river, we had to trade live chickens and betel nuts to the chief of the tribe to let us come.
Wow.
And then while we were there, this boy got his arm ripped off by a crocodile. And then 2 days later, this old man got eaten by a crocodile. Oh, yeah. It was, and I saw one of those blood ticking ceremonies.
Yeah.
The crocodile clan, I watched that. Yeah, I was like only like the fourth woman to watch that. It was, the local women aren't allowed to watch that. They have to be away. They're not allowed to see who's going through the ceremony and see who does the ceremony. It was insane. And just watching a wedding, and like the woman was sold for dog teeth and a cassowary egg, and they eat stink pig, which is the closest to human flesh because they used to be, cannibals. So they eat this thing called stink pig, where they take a whole pig, they just take the hair off of it, bury it in the ground, wrap it in banana leaves, bury it. They don't use fire. They just bury it.
Oh, it's ferment it.
Yes.
Yeah.
Dig that thing up and start eating on it with the worms and all in there.
Oh.
Holy
Nice.
moly. Yeah. So that was pretty crazy.
To say you've been influenced by your travels is probably not.
What?
I was trying to think of the word, like, to say you've been influenced by your travels is a far understatement.
Yeah.
It's quite neat. Eden, it's been a total pleasure having you on. And I'm sure I feel like you've uncovered so much, and there's so much more that you could uncover. Before I close it out with a quote, I think if there's anyone out there who's either watching or listening to this at any point in time, if they're with us this far, is there some sort of, how could you wrap up or encapsulate, whether that's via like an action step or it's just inspiration or motivation? What's something you want to say to someone who's been listening to us thus far?
I think that everybody has an ability, and whatever that means, as far as the community, everybody has an ability to help. And helping, it can be something really small. It doesn't have to mean, flying off to, Nicaragua to open up a girls' school, or, everyone has the ability to help. And through that, you make so much self-discovery that it's not all about, us as a person. I think we get too egocentric with ourselves. And when you give, you get so much in return. I know that sounds cliche, but there's a reason why it's a cliche, because it's true. Yeah. And even, you can just start on something really small. Even if, like, you're standing in line at the grocery store and you smile at someone, just something literally that small. I think that we all are so fortunate, and just to be grateful, like you said, Matt, just that you can turn on a light switch and have light or hot water, that just be grateful. And I hear people complain about how life is so rough and hard, and life isn't rough. If you're watching this, life for you is not rough. I'm sorry to be crass about it. I, for myself, am very, very grateful in the position I am and where I am, and just to have gratitude, and with that gratitude, give. Just simply give. Even if it's donating to breast cancer, or to the local food bank, or if you can donate your time, which is the most valuable thing, or your wisdom, like you do, Matt. You impart your wisdom because that's what you have to offer. And someone will take something away from that and maybe change their life, even if it's a small thing. But just be aware of your surroundings, who you are and who's around you, and just give when you can, even if it's a small, I don't know, doing.
Piece of yourself, yeah.
And don't be afraid by fear, because as you all know, you're not gonna living safely isn't gonna keep you alive.
Yeah.
Just don't be afraid. Try to relinquish or shatter fear that you have in anything, whether it's keeping yourself from doing something you've always wanted, or fear of reaching out to someone else, or fear of helping your local man, or even imagining yourself bigger.
Right.
Shatter the fear, and be open to help and receive.
Break the fear, right, Matt?
Break through fears. Yeah, I think that's a very important part of. I think for me, when I follow my curiosity and I uncover my passions, and then when I move towards those, very serendipitous events come up that call me to have to look at the bigger version of myself and break through my fears, and that's been a very big piece in my growth process. But Eden, that was very true, and that was very beautiful, so thank you for that. And our quote to wrap up the show is from Jawaharlal Nehru. I said that first, so I didn't hammer it at the end. And it goes nicely to what you were actually just saying, Eden. The quote is, "We live in a wonderful world that is full of beauty, charm, and adventure. There is no end to the adventures we can have if only we seek them with our open eyes." So thank you all for listening. Eden, it's been a pleasure. Until next time, folks, keep rocking and see what you can do to find your adventures with open eyes. All right, guys.
Until next time.
Scott, Eden, talk to you soon.